Bees are struggling to find flowers because of air pollution. Research carried out by the University of Birmingham shows higher levels of ozone in the air drastically reduces the chemical signals plants use to attract pollinators, and that in turn makes it much harder for bees to find them. Our science correspondent David Gregory-Kumar is here. David, you've been looking into this. Sounds very intriguing. So what's going on?
Well, as you said, it's all to do with the chemicals that plants and flowers produce. We think of them as the smell, the scent, but they have another role, which is to guide the bees to the flowers. So if we look, we've got a flower in the corner of the studio. There it is, looking very beautiful, and it's producing these chemicals. They're called volatile organic chemicals, or VOXes, and basically they're attracting all the bees around us towards that flower. But for some time, scientists have been worried that increasing levels of pollution in the air, particularly something called ozone, have been having an impact on those chemicals and making it harder for the bees to find the flowers.
And we found that even relatively close to that flower, within 6 meters, if you look at the center of that plume coming off the flower, you have around half of the bees that could before recognize that VOC no longer finding the flower.
That's a big drop-off, David. What lies behind it?
Yeah, it's really big. It's actually surprised the scientists. So what they've actually done is gone into the laboratory and trying to measure the chemicals and visualise what's going on. And what they found is the chemicals of the VOXes produce a sort of plume coming out from the flower. That's guiding our bee to the flower there. And this is really subtle, clever chemistry by the flower. It's enough that the bees can tell one flower from another type of flower. And it doesn't overwhelm the bees so they get confused. It just guides them in. It's just enough. But because it's so subtle, it's pretty vulnerable to what's going on around in the atmosphere. And so as the levels of pollution increase, it seems to be interfering with this plume. So what the scientists did was, in the lab, they turned up the levels of ozone, the pollutant they're interested in, and you can see it degrades the plume and it starts to shrink, and in the end it's about 1/3 the size. And that means it's a lot harder, obviously, for the bees to find out where they're actually going. And the levels of ozone that actually produce this effect, this final frame here, well, that's about the level you find typically by any roadside in the Midlands.
Sounds pretty serious, so what can be done?
That is very true. It is serious. The scientists are surprised by the big effect, so I asked them exactly that. What can we do?
The straightforward solution is to reduce pollution, to reduce levels of air pollutants such as ozone, such as diesel exhaust, which is another component we looked at, and that obviously would help.
So, as I said, it's the size of this effect that surprised everyone, and the scientists are arguing that, you know, getting rid of pollution, improving air quality isn't just going to be good news for you and me in terms of our health, it's also going to be good news, it turns out, for the bees and actually the flowers that depend on them.
It's really interesting research. Thank you for that, David.